Hello and welcome to Dyslexia Module 4. This is the last in 4 modules about dyslexia, and I'm going to talk you through how the modules are set up in a moment, just in case you've been watching them out of order or if this is the first one you've got up to. My name is Andrew Whitehouse and I am a TEDx speaker. I delivered a TEDx from Disability to Superpowers. I'm a Bamford lecturer, creating autism-friendly audiology clinics, and I deliver short courses at Bishop Grosseteste University and the University of Lincoln. I'm a forensic special educational needs disability consultant. That means I provide expert witness work, impartial expert witness work in the courts around SEND court cases, and I do training, observations, and I'm a keynote speaker. And I'm probably sure that you'll have come across me up and down the country doing something or other. If you want to get hold of me, I'm hoping you will want to get hold of me after this workshop. You can speak to me on Facebook, Andrew Whitehouse at People First Education. I'm available on Twitter, Andrew WSEN, LinkedIn, Andrew Whitehouse with a load of letters after his name. I missed out Instagram, which is also Andrew WSEN. And if you're feeling a little bit old-fashioned, you can get hold of me by email. You can even contact me on the website. There is a contact form at peoplefirsteducation.com. So I'm an easy person to get hold of. Okay, let's have a little look at dyslexia. The workshops that we put together here, just very, very quickly. The workshops, when I was approached to put these together, I subbed them down into the 4 following sections, and the subsections were effects on dyslexia on learning and teaching, dyslexia and the implications for teaching, neuroplasticity and teaching the brain to track text, and self-assessment and monitoring comprehension. I've pretty much stuck to these, to be fair with you, but they have kind of melded into each other as well. It has become quite stream of consciousness. So what I will say to you is this: the best way to watch this is from 1 to 4 in order. Treat it like one big course in 4 parts rather than 4 individual parts, because it isn't that simple, and I did have to sort of combine some work. Okay, right. When we start straight away, we're using balanced presentations and activities. When you are delivering work to dyslexic children or dyslexic adults, you should make an effort to balance all presentations with visual information, so and also participatory activities. What I'm trying to say here is you've got me talking to you, you've got your visuals of the words on the board, and you'll also have little activities to do throughout the workshop. And this is important because it's what we call multimodal learning. I want you to be learning in a variety of different ways. There also should be a balance between large group, small group, and individual activities. And again, as a teacher, you may well be doing this all the time. So whole class activity, break off into your groups, do this on your own. This is to not only provide, again, more multimodal learning, but it's also to help you teach the children social skills. So, we also might want to simultaneously combine verbal and visual information. And so what we would do there, we would maybe say, right, okay, you're going to have the visual display. So you will have this on a screen in front of you, maybe a phone or a laptop or your TV. If you're in a classroom, it might well be the interactive whiteboard presentation, and you might also have a paper or an electronic handout to back that up with. This is, again, getting all areas of the brain working simultaneously. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be multimodal, we're trying to be verbal, and we're trying to be visual. So here's some ideas to get you going straight away. If you are starting a new project, a new module in school on a new topic, you might want to provide with some key words. Now, I'm going to teach you the dyslexic way to use those keywords. So here we've got some keywords this is the Tudors. And so on our keywords about the Tudors, we've got an alphabetical list of words that we might want to share with our learners about the Tudors. So we start at Anne Boleyn, Armada, Banquet, Beheaded, Bible, Bloody Mary, and we finish it Succession, Supremacy and Treason. It's quite powerful words in there, aren't there? We can do this with any subject, any topic whatsoever. You get your keywords and you put them in there. Now, proportion of work in secondary school is quite lots of your work in secondary school isn't marked for spelling unless it's technical vocabulary. So we may have a situation here where those words are hugely important to get them spelt right. And so, but in primary school as well, we want to learn the words, we want to be familiar with the words, and we want to be able to use the words. So this is really important stuff to get these words into your learners' everyday use in education. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tell you about a strategy that I use called 5 times presentation of a word. So you've got your keywords. You might use slightly less than what we've got there. That was quite a lot. There was 2 rows of it. You might use more. It's up to you. I'd say you probably wouldn't use more, but as much as that and maybe slightly less. And you want them listed big, nice big. Get some wallpaper backing paper and roll it out and write it up in marker pen so it's nice and big, and hang it. At the beginning of your history lesson, you're talking about the Tudors, hang this up. Have the one we just showed you, have that one laminated and with your learner, and your learner should there have a dry white pen or what have you. So when you speak a word, you say a word, you say, so for example, we're going to use the word Armada in a sentence. The Spanish had a load of boats and they called them the Armada. Okay, brilliant. So the Spanish had a load of boats and they called them the Armada. And I might point to that word on our list. So you've got the word the Armada. The child then has heard the word and seen the word because you've referred to it. They then go back to their list in front of them and they use their alphabet skills to locate where that word. Not too difficult. This one begins with A. A. Okay, brilliant. Got our A's. And then we would underline it or line it in with your dry wipe. And within this, you're also doing a tracking activity, which I talked about in Module 3, where we're tracking from left to right. So, very important. You've heard it, seen it, located it, kinestheticked it, and tracked it. Kinestheticked it. I was joking. I mean, interacted with the word. So that's what you've done. Obviously, this activity could be topic related. It could be science, changing states. You might have steam, water, melting, those sorts of things. You could take the list home to practice. You can cut them up into flashcards. You can cut up sentences into words and put them back together, putting those things in. So that's some of the stuff that you can do with that. Now down here, somewhere, here we go. We've got a very simple version of this that you might use with little ones. This is called Fun with Sounds, and you're basically just doing pretty much the same thing with some of your keywords, your high frequency words. With what I was talking about is they are subject specific words. If you're a secondary teacher, you might have different words for different groups. You'd carry it with your planning. If you're a primary teacher, you would take those words down at the end of a lesson, and then you might put your maths words up for your maths lesson that's coming next. So again, lots of stuff you can do with this, and actually very, very, very effective. So, bark. Did anyone at home do a woof noise? Did you? Yeah, well actually that's not the bark I wanted. I wanted the bark of a tree. And so if you have a word like bark, it might be the bark of a dog, might be the bark of a tree, might be this gentleman here, who is, of course, Johann Sebastian Bach. And I know he's spelt differently before you let me know. But what we're talking about here is, if you have a word with multiple meanings, please put that word into a sentence. Try to contextualize the word. So here we've got Bach. You might say, this piece of music was composed by Bach. And then none of you would have woofed at the screen. I wonder if anyone did. They always do on the workshops, you know. And it's funny because when we used to do spelling tests, which we now know are wholly ineffective and stressful, we used to do that. I certainly remember having to, the word would be ball, the boy kicked a ball, or whatever. Okay. Let's talk about motivation. Right, okay. There are studies out there to say that effective teachers are the ones that motivate you the most. So the situation is this, that the less engaging the teacher is, they undermine student motivation. So they might establish a negative tone in the class, great emphasis on extrinsic rewards, calling attention to weak performances by students, providing ineffective or unclear feedback, fostering competition among students, engaging teachers, never teach in ways that undermine students' motivation. And quite right, they shouldn't. But, excuse me. So you have to think about that. What are you doing to motivate your learners? How are you motivating your learners? Some of the things you need to do: consolidate previous learning or lessons. So if we were looking at our Tudor activity there, we might want to, when we are talking about something in modern sociology, something like that, refer back to situations in Tudor times. I can remember when the Iraq War, the second Iraq War, was going on, that the news was relating it back to Tudor times, for example, and it was helping people to understand it and put it in a context that they could engage with. I'm not sure how accurate those relations were, but that's what they were doing on the telly. Connect new knowledge with prior knowledge and do lots and lots of repetition. For learners who struggle with handwriting and fine motor responses, response mode can be underlining, multiple choice questions. If you remember what I said in Module 3, multiple choice questions, you might want to colour in different multiple choice answers with different highlighters so they don't get mixed up. You might have sorting activities, marking activities, and learners with fine motor problems can be given extra space or even whiteboards, and we use whiteboards quite a lot. I've got some here, and I do also have, as I've shown on the ADHD course, talking whiteboards as well, which I quite like to use. But here's a nice little whiteboard you can write on: wipe off. Okay. If you're doing things that you can do to help with the jumbling up of numbers, it's a natty little trick, as I called it. Turn lined paper vertically for maths, so that you get your, if you don't have any squared paper, actually it works better with lined paper vertical, to get your place value and things like that. Using cues to denote important items, and asterisks or bullet points to denote questions or activities. If you are typing using word processing, if there's areas that you're going to struggle with, another nice little trick is to put an asterisk in there, or an X, or what have you. Asterisk is best because it doesn't show up too much in words. So put an asterisk in there, and then you can use the search and find function to go back to that and make reference to it. Okay. I want to talk about some self-assessment. Now, what I would like to say is that we want to teach children to be able to be able to assess their own work and be able to analyse their own work as they're going along. People with dyslexia struggle with focusing on what is needed in a piece of work. So what we want is we want to teach a kind of beginning, middle and end structure to any kind of learning. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to teach you how I would do it, how I've always done it, and believe me, I've even done this with children as young as sort of 6 years old in a more simplified form. So at the beginning of any activity, what is your goal? What do you want to get at the end? Now, you might have that as part of your learning objective. So it might be like a WILF, if anyone remembers WILF, what I'm looking for. If you remember Blue Peter, here's one I got ready earlier. What do I want to achieve? What do I want to end up with? What do I need to know? What do I need to know in order to start the task? And so you might gather up the information. That information might be in the form of resources like books, texts, web addresses, things like that. It might be other tools and resources. And then most importantly, what is my deadline? Now your deadline your deadline is crucial because you want to have a halfway point. So your deadline might be 10 minutes time. So your halfway point's 5 minutes time. Your deadline might be in a month. So you might have several halfway points, forgive me mathematicians. So in your deadline, you might say, okay, it's a month's time. So I'm going to go to the middle bit 3 times during that month, just to make sure I'm on track. So here we go to the middle bit. How close am I to achieving my goal? Okay, so you might refer back and say, let's see, what was the goal? Okay, am I in line for that? If it's a question, have I answered the question correctly? I can remember my very first undergraduate essay. I received a big fat 0 for it because actually I didn't answer the question. By the way, biggest cause of fail in undergraduate essays is not answering the question. I had an essay which was how do children learn through drawing, and I wrote a whole lovely big essay on how children learn through art. If I'd have managed to stick to what I think is a good idea here, I'd have probably not failed. So will I accomplish? In that case, I'm going, actually, no, this is wrong. What else can I do to achieve the task? I need to go back. I need to see if there's anything I can edit to make it fit. Is there anything that I can add to it? And are there new things that I can put in and stuff that I'm going to take out? And do I need any other resources? And so that's kind of a really good middle bit. And as I say, if you've got a long period of time, you might want lots of middle bits to keep checking you on task. And at the end, did I accomplish my goal? Yes, maybe. If I'd gone back and checked and changed it. Was I efficient? Well, no, not really. What went well? I went back and checked. There's a learning thing in there, isn't there? A learning curve in there. Why? Why did it go well? What didn't work? Why didn't it go well? And then, as all good assessments should be, what am I going to change next time? It should be circular, feeding it into yourself. And you want to have this almost like a checklist. If you can do it like a checklist, I would. But again, very helpful for people with dyslexia who struggle to write anyway, to give them a bit of structure. Okay. Monitoring comprehension. What you're trying to do, you're teaching children to track their thinking, to have a process, a thinking process, to notice when they've lost focus, stop, go back, maybe reread, maybe identify where they got confused, and maybe then selecting the best strategy to move on with. So that's what we're trying to do. And again, it's a process. Okay. Oh, should have gone back there. So don't look at the answers on the screen there, please. So now I want to talk to you about different reading techniques. And it says there, describe different reading techniques. I'm not going to ask you to describe them. What I am going to do is I'm going to say, can you describe or give a definition of reading for pleasure and reading for detail? And then can you tell me the difference between skimming and scanning? So let's give you 5 minutes to look at that little activity, and we'll meet up together in those 5 minutes and see how you got on. Okay, welcome back. Skimming, scanning, reading for pleasure and reading for detail. So, what's the difference between skimming and scanning? Skimming and scanning is active and passive. So, what I've got here is I've got the case from a Looney Tunes Golden Collection DVD box set. And I'm planning to have a bit of a party night, and I'm going to have my friends round because the COVID-19 crisis is long over, and we're going to have a Looney Tunes night. I'm skimming to see what good ones are in there, what things are in there. So, oh, Daffy Duck, Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig, I love Porky Pig. Elmer Fudd, yes, I think we can enjoy that. That's skimming. It's a passive activity to see what jumps out at me. Now I'm going to scan it. Right, I've got all these friends coming over. I want to get through all this. How long is this? So I'm looking specifically for the time. And here it is. This is the scanning information. This is an active task. 413 minutes. 6, 12, 18, 24, 300. Okay, 360. 20, 7 hours. The perfect night in. I shall order takeaway. And so that's the difference between skimming and scanning. Skimming is passive, scanning is active. You're looking for specific information. Reading for pleasure. Reading for pleasure is a good one. I'm going to get my reading for pleasure book, and this is my reading for pleasure book. This is literally whatever you want it to be. So I have a relative, an elderly relative, who she reads 3 novels a week, and the first thing she does is she reads the end of the book. Now I can hear people hissing at the camera and saying, really, you shouldn't be doing that. Well, she reads 3 novels a week and she clearly enjoys it. Who are we to question her enjoyment? What she actually says is, if I don't like the end of the book, I'm not going to read the book. And that's what she used to say. Actually, now she says, if I die, I know how my book finished. But that's how they read for pleasure. For me, I can't lie to you. I've picked up on Batman comics from my son. I've read all this academic text over the years, and now I've gone into Batman comics. I also love coffee table books. I love a big book. So I had one that was about Elvis Presley's Gracelands. It's full of fantastic pictures. I like a book you put down and it goes, you know, I particularly like it at Christmas. Someone buy me a book at Christmas. I don't care what it's about, as long as it's big and heavy and got lots of pictures in it. And that's what I really like to do. Reading for detail. When I'm putting these courses together, that's going to fall. When I'm putting these courses together, or if I'm reading government policies and things like that, obviously I have to read that for detail. I have to know exactly what's going on in those. So, skimming, you might read the main headings, introduction and conclusion, and you're really using skimming to check whether you want to read more of the text. Scanning, you're looking for a keyword or phrase before you start scanning. You see the word in your mind, and then you look down the page, focus on the middle of each line as you look down the page to find out that your Looney Tunes is 413 minutes. Reading for pleasure, you might want to take longer, use more visual imagery, using for escapism, and you should be relaxed. It's about being calm and relaxed, and it's for pleasure. This is very interesting because we do have situations in schools. I can think of one in particular which bothered me. We had a year 6 child who liked the CBeebies comic, and they weren't letting him read it because they said he should be reading more advanced texts. And I argued that if you treat reading like this now, you're in danger of putting that child off learning for life. There is nothing wrong with me reading Batman comics, I think. But anyway, I've got plenty of other stuff to read as well. And then reading for detail, reading every word very carefully, even reading some words or sentences to ensure accurate comprehension, and we're focusing on accuracy. So let's have an activity. We're going to say we've got our AS revision notes for history. Are we going to skim, scan, read for pleasure, or read for detail? That's skimming, scanning, reading for pleasure, or reading for detail. I leave you with that. We'll come back in a moment. Hello, welcome back. Okay, reading for pleasure, skimming, scanning, reading for detail. Some of you may have struggled with this on the workshops where there are people in the room. People do struggle with this because actually when you are in a position you've got to read a book like this, you don't even think about it. You know what to do. So what you would do is you would skim it first, have a look through that book. Is this the book for me? Is this a book that I want to read? Does it meet my needs? Then we would scan it, and we're doing history. As you know, today we've been looking at the Tudors. Let's see if there's a good section on the Tudors. So we scan it and we find the Tudors. And then we might read that section for detail. Where the reading for pleasure comes in is, if you're particularly interested in the Tudors, then that's the reading for pleasure. But it's skimming, scanning, reading for detail. Let's try another one. Michael Morpurgo, Running Wild. Is this skimming, scanning, or reading for pleasure, or reading for detail? Okay, what do we think? So again, when we run it, when I'm getting instant responses from people, one of the things that we always get is reading for pleasure. Reading for pleasure, I can think of nothing less pleasurable than reading a Michael Morpurgo book. He really is not one of my favourite authors. I don't enjoy it. I did go to see him deliver a talk once. He was magnificent. It was really, really good. I took one of my sons with me. He enjoyed it too. But I have to say that that his books really do nothing for me. It's a very easy mistake to make, picking out texts for a class and saying, the kids will love these. Big, easy mistake to make. And so just be aware that some children will not read what you think for pleasure might be. So skimming, scanning, reading for detail, reading for pleasure, could be any of these. Could be any of these. We could be skimming it just to get the gist of it. We could be scanning it to see if there's anything interesting in there that we're looking for. Reading for pleasure, as probably most people would do with a children's novel. And reading for detail if you're doing a critical analysis of that text. Okay. Careless Love, The Unmaking of Elvis Presley. This is a biography. I personally love biographies, and I love Elvis. Who doesn't? This is part 2 of Elvis's biography. It's a very detailed biography. Part 1 is called Last Train to Memphis, and it's basically about people with no money wearing dungarees and being too hot in sandy environments. That's kind of what it's about. Did nothing for me. Careless Love, however, is about a man who shoots tellies and goes out and buys 200 Cadillacs and does all that sort of thing, spends thousands of dollars on gold and wears gold lame suits, and that's the Elvis that I love. And that's a great book as far as I'm concerned. Who would be interested in borrowing this book off me? I'm guessing not many people. You have to be interested in the subject. For me, that's reading for pleasure. But giving me a book about a mostly skint Elvis in dungarees, I'm just not interested. This is the newspaper. This is the front page of a Guardian. I was very close to taking newspapers out of my workshops because I felt people didn't read newspapers anymore, and that's because I live in the countryside. And it turns out if you live in the big cities, you can't go anywhere without somebody giving you a newspaper on the bus or the train or the tube or whatever it is. The newspaper is fascinating in a different way as a study, because actually you might well be doing all 4, reading for detail, reading for pleasure, skimming and scanning, all at once, and you might even be doing it backwards. And so, for example, you might be interested in sports, so you start your newspaper at the back, and that's how people do it. They might start it at the back and then start it again from the front. It really is that complicated. You might be skimming it to see what's in there, what's in the news today, has anything happened, scanning it to find out about things that you are particularly interested in. I can remember being in London and there had been an aeroplane crash in the city where I lived, or near the city where I lived, and I was scanning in the newspaper to find out if there's any information about this. And then you might be also, there'll be a subject that you're particularly interested in, and you might read that for pleasure. I would add into that reading for displeasure as well. We do seem to take joy in reading about politicians that we don't like and having a good old gripe and moan about them. So skimming, scanning, reading for pleasure, reading for detail, reading backwards, reading forwards, all at the same time in your newspaper. This here is a worksheet, and I've used this again. I'm going to use this a second time. I'm going to do the same activity as I did in the Dyscalculia course. I'm going to do it here in dyslexia. Zach has 3 bags of sweets. Each bag contains n sweets inside. What is the only unchangeable thing in those 2 opening sentences? Have a think about it, and we'll meet up when you've got it. Welcome back. Okay, it is 3. So Toby has 3 buckets of frogs. Each bucket contains X frogs inside. And it's really, really difficult. Now, what the point I'm making here, I'm making a different point here than I am with the Dyscalculia workshop that I did. My point here is, if you're a good mathematician, if you get a question like this, you might fail the maths question because of literacy skills. And therefore, you know, if you have dyslexia, that might cause you to fail that maths question. Got some resources I'd like you to look at. Normally I would hand these out. They used to be quite cheap. You used to be able to buy sets of them, but now that, for whatever reason, maybe they've got more popular, you have to pay a little bit more for them. So down here, these are called Barrington Stoke books. So I'm just going to pick up 2 or 3 here and show you them. These have been very, very well loved, as you can see, very well thumbed. So I'm going to show you how they work. So they're normal, they look like normal average teenage novels, but when you open them, they're very different inside, and they are appropriate for learners with dyslexia because they're non-challenging. They've got large text, they're quite well spaced. This one doesn't have any images inside, but I'm going to find one that does. Yeah, this one's even more well spaced, so that'd be slightly less ability when it comes to reading, not across the board, but just reading. And so that's quite a nice one there. And it's got lots of images to back it up. Really helpful. They do tend to start halfway down a chapter, halfway down a page in a chapter, and they have very, very short paragraphs. So you generally don't get more than 5 or 6 lines in a paragraph. And then this one here, obviously you might take off the dyslexic friendly sticker. This one here, again, is even more spaced out text and even less words and more images. And also you'll notice that the colours on the page are tinted in order to stop any visual stress. These are really, really good books, and I really recommend them. Benefits of these are, I would say, you know, I mean, I have been to places where secondary students are expected to read Oxford Reading Tree and Biff and Chip and the Magic Key and all those things. Obviously, this is not appropriate for learners of that age. and I wouldn't recommend it. Let's put these ones away. And so the benefit is it gets you into reading. If you are on the bus and you're reading that, I would imagine nobody would think that you're reading anything unusual or particularly dyslexic friendly. They really are, just looks like a normal book. They're great for self-esteem. The only thing I would say is, the only downfall I would say is that you can't get every book like it. So how can I put it? So you can't get Harry Potter in a Barrington Stoke issue or that kind of issue. But they are very good. I think mostly for self-esteem. Okay, I would like to talk about B's and D's and P's and Q's and some ideas that you can use to help you get them around the right way. If you are early years foundation stage and you've got to this point, you can probably stop here because I'm covering this and in more detail in the EYFS module of this workshop. Okay, so let's start off with, where do we start? I would say that you might want to start where you don't want to start. You don't want to be starting with B's and D's. So you don't want to be saying, let's look at B's and D's and getting them the right way around. Where you want to be starting is with one or the other. Let's work with the letter B. Think Sesame Street. Let's work with the letter B. Let's concentrate on getting the B the right way around. So that's what we would do. And so we're working with the letter B, and when we've got that into our mind, we then have the knowledge to say, when we see something different, that is not a B, that's a D, a P or a Q. So work on the letter yourself. So what I'm going to be looking at is the letter P. So you want lots of handwriting practice on the letter P. You want to be maybe doing it in a sand tray, doing it on paper, doing it in all sorts of, in shaving foam, writing it in shaving foam. Try it with your eyes open or shut. That's quite good fun. Every time you say the letter, you have to say, or write the letter, you have to say the letter. You know, so we're totally consolidating. Do you remember at the beginning of this module when I said practice, practice, practice? It's how you learn things is by studying it and applying it. The mnemonic, I'm going to talk about puppy. So we could talk about the shape of the head being puppy. Yeah, and there's the puppy's head. The descenders, the floppy ears. The round bit at the front is the round bit. I don't know. But that's how we would do it. Puppies always look forward to meet towards the next letter because they like to make new friends. Actually, what they're also doing is sniffing other puppies' bottoms. They like you to stroke their ears and round their face. Stroke their ears, round the face. It's actually that. It's very difficult to do this back to front. For you early years teachers out there, you'll be a lot better at this than me. And so that's how we'll be doing that. Other activities that you can do, you could be circling the letter P in words. You could be circling, so you go through your text, you see a letter P, you circle it, find loads of them, circle them. Circle it with the P shape. That's not consolidating letter formation, but it is consolidating it facing in a certain direction. Listening to P in words and clap every time you hear it. Adding P to complete words, or as I like to say, adding P top complete words. So that really helps with phonics acquisition. Tipexing, green Tipex, safe Tipex. Tipex out all the P's in a text and then go back and add them all back again. Colouring in P's and making P out of plasticine, pink or purple plasticine if that's available to you, because we want to be really doing that thing. And then get yourself onto Google Images and type in colouring P. Type it the American way, colouring, C-O-L-O-R-I-N-G, P, and see what comes up. And you will get loads and loads and loads of colouring activities. So this one here is a panda holding a P, it's giving it a hug, and you can colour that one in. This is a Mr. Blobby P. If you're of the generation that I am, you might remember Mr. Blobby. But again, we're spending loads of time colouring it in and looking at the letter P. This one's an interesting one. When I handed this out, people started making the shape with their fingers. Brilliant. It made it interactive, made it tactile, a tactile activity. With this one, I like it because it really does over-accentuate with the curl on the P on the inside, over-accentuates the P formation. And then I just want to deviate just for a second and talk about the fact that children who put love hearts and stars when they're dotting the I's, I always say at least they're remembering to dot the I's. They probably won't do it when they're applying for a job. And maybe they'll get the job if they do. A little bit of personality in there. So why would we use this? We would use this colouring activity because we are spending quality time with the letter P. That's exactly what it's about. Quality time with the letter P. Other things you can do, excuse me. Sorry, not other things you can do. Confusion is a weakness in visual skills, discrimination, memory. I really like these hands-on activities. I tend not to use, there's loads of computer programs out there for dyslexia. I tend not to use them too much. I'm more likely use these hands-on multisensory ones, although I'm not against using the computer activities. I just think they're more revision, reinforcement. They're add-ons rather than just what you would do. Directed task, I would like you to design activities for the other three letters here, B, D and Q. So we had puppy for the letter P. What I'd like you to do is to design activities for B, D and Q. That's your directed task for this one. I've also got an activity that I'd like to share with you. I got this from the internet. Can't remember where. It's not mine. Forgive me, I can't credit it. But it's a game called Battle Words. If we just get it over there. Okay, I'm struggling to get this. There we go. Battle Words. And how Battle Words works is it's a little bit like battleships. And so you've got a grid. And you put words in the grid. So the words that I've put in, the words I've chosen actually are words that might change from dialect to dialect. So again, thought, laughed, water, water, good, things, all those. So I thought they were really good ones to start with. You would want a learning objective around them, certainly, but that's what I've chosen for words that are affected by dialect. So that's quite a nice one, and the idea is that it is a less invasive and less stressful way of of learning words, much less stressful than a spelling test. Sad to say, I've got a second directed task for you as well. And so not only have you got to do the D's, Q's and B's, I also want you to answer this question. How do you integrate appropriate text to match special interests and ability? What I'm really saying is, how do you get those children to engage with these texts? So thank you very much for coming along again today. It's been a pleasure working with you. If you need anything, be in touch, and I will see you for the next things that I will be filming will be PDA, Pathological Demand Avoidance Syndrome.